This is the City Robin X Plus, and it's the top tier Dutch style commuter cruiser hybrid from Euphree. This bike is really awesome and it has a lot of features that I didn't expect to see at this price point. So what are those things? Let's take a ride and find out. Hey everyone, I'm John with Electric Bike Report. One quick reminder before we jump into the review, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on our future content. We have more e-bike giveaways in the works, and we definitely want to make sure you and your friends can get the chance to enter. With that out of the way, let's talk about the City Robin here. I've got to say right up front that this is an extremely comfortable e-bike that was an absolute pleasure to ride and test. That's really the defining feature of this bike in my mind. It has a nice thick saddle with a lot of room. There's some comfortable swept back handlebars with ergonomic faux leather grips. And on top of that, there's both a suspension fork up front and a suspension seat post. Both of those are made by SR Suntour. So in my experience, riding over bumps on this bike felt super smooth and a little bit more like gliding or floating. Another huge feature here is the bike's 500-watt rear hub motor with a torque sensor, and that sensor allows the motor to put out more power and speed if you pedal harder, and if you prefer a more relaxing ride with low effort, it can also back off to meet you there as well. I really liked how responsive this made the bike feel. It felt a lot like an analog bike, except that my effort had a lot more payoff here. Another thing that stood out from our testing was the bike's 48-volt, 672 watt-hour battery, which gives it really good range, but we'll talk about the specifics of that a little bit later. The battery is also UL certified, and it's integrated into the underside of the down tube, so it looks really clean, and it's removable, so you can charge it in or out of the bike. There's a lot to go over when it comes to the bike's specs and components, but I've got to give Euphree some credit for taking things up a notch here with a lot of little elements that make a big difference overall. As you can see, the bike comes really well outfitted for commuting with lights, fenders, and a cargo rack, but like a transformer, there's more than meets the eye here. That headlight is huge and it's super bright. It actually produces 200 lumens, which is about the same as 200 candle flames. And while most cargo racks have about a 55-pound capacity, this one is welded to the seat stays to be stronger, and it can hold up to 100 pounds. There's also a key-operated wheel lock on the rear wheel, which might not prevent someone from picking up the bike and running off with it, but it will stop them from hopping on and riding off into the sunset. But even the quality of the bell on the handlebars is really nice. The sound actually carries for a lot longer than most. The main stuff is really good too though. Euphree used a lot of solid name brand parts. In addition to the Bafung motor, the Velo saddle, and the SR Suntour fork and suspension seat post, the battery uses Samsung cells. The tires are made by Kenda. They're 27.5-inch by 2.125, and I really liked the hybrid tread pattern there for pavement and maybe a little dirt or gravel. There are also Tektro hydraulic disc brakes with 180mm rotors, and this is the E350 system that is rated for e-bikes. There's also a 7-speed drivetrain, and I really enjoyed this setup. It uses a 50-tooth chainring with an 11 to 28-tooth cassette. That worked really well with the bike's Class 3 speeds of up to 28 miles per hour. Shifting felt really great as well with the Microshift 26 derailleur, really snappy and responsive, and there's also a nice KMC chain included there as well. Up in the cockpit, the setup is pretty clean and effective. I really liked the Microshift trigger shifter on the right bar, and then on the left, there's the throttle lever and display and control panel unit. It's not the prettiest display I've ever seen, but it also doesn't try to throw too much data at you, and all of the necessary stuff is included. But the last thing is the adjustable stem made by Zoom that includes a clip for mounting your phone. That works with the SP Connect system, and Euphree actually sells phone cases for a variety of iPhones that connect to this, and cases for other phones are available on the SP Connect website. This is a really cool system that can actually hold storage compartments as well, and it's not something you'll find on every bike out there. Okay, that was a lot. So if you made it this far, thanks for sticking in there. Let's move on to the fun stuff now and talk about our testing. The City Robin X Plus did a decent job in our brake test. With those hydraulic disc brakes, we measured an average stopping distance of 23 feet 7 inches after pedaling up to 20 miles per hour, hitting the brakes, and then measuring how far the bike traveled before stopping. With the Tektro E350 system, this result is pretty average, although compared to the other commuter and cruiser style e-bikes we've tested with all kinds of different brake systems, it's a little on the slow side, at least when it comes to the numbers. We wouldn't mind seeing better performance, but what we ended up with is in our acceptable range. And in the real world, the bike did a really good job. I did some separate tests both on and off-road, and I was really satisfied. The brakes seemed to have a lot of bite, and with my height and then a little bit of a higher center of gravity, I think this setup felt really solid. I actually like that it didn't stop too fast, so those tires really came into play as well. They did a great job of keeping the bike stable, and I never noticed the wheels locking up or wanting to slide at all. I want to bring you with me for our speed test on the City Robin X Plus. I tested each of the bike's 4 pedal assist settings, and I also tried the throttle to see how quickly it could reach 20 miles per hour. Let's go out and see how the bike did. All right, we are here on the Euphree City Robin X Plus to do a speed test. Pedaling here with no motor assistance, around 11.5 miles per hour, pretty comfortably. Let's bump up to eco mode. Now, the boost here is pretty subtle. I don't even really hear the motor working, but I do feel the little bit of extra help there. So looks like we're gonna land around 13 miles per hour here. Let's jump up to tour mode, where we're really getting some power here up into what I believe is about 5th gear. And that torque sensor is definitely responding to the amount of pressure I'm applying. And I'm trying to use sort of a moderate level of effort to show what the torque sensor can do, although it is capped at different speeds in each PAS setting. So here looks like we're gonna land right around 17.5 miles per hour. Let's bump up to sport mode. Okay, yeah, there we go. There's some power, and you can see, every pedal stroke I'm getting more of a boost, getting up to around 21.5 in this setting, and then we're gonna get around this person and then jump up to turbo. Moving up to turbo mode now. Jump up to 7th gear. This is the maximum amount of power, and this is a class 3 bike, so in theory it can reach 28 miles per hour. I've gotten it up to about 26.5, which feels just fine on this bike. So here, with kind of a moderate level of effort, we're landing kind of around 24 miles, 24.5. There we go. All right, we will call it there. All right, so we are here on the Euphree City Robin X Plus to do a throttle acceleration test from 0 to 20. Now, as it is right now, our test bike does go up to 25 on the throttle, but we'll stop the video when it hits 20. So ready, set, and go. I like that the acceleration doesn't come on too strong there. It's, a good rate of build. and 20. So I was actually able to pedal pretty fast without motor assistance, and that's because this bike weighs only around 62 pounds, including the battery. I measured a max of 12.3 miles per hour there, and then I hit 13.4 when I bumped up to eco mode. So not a big jump, but I could feel a little help from the motor. Going up from there, I felt pretty steady increases in power that all made a really big difference. I got 17.8 miles per hour in tour mode, 22 in sport mode, and then 26.1 miles per hour in turbo mode. Overall, this distribution is really solid and very even between settings. Eco mode is a little underpowered when compared to the rest, but if you're just looking for a relaxed pace, it'll do you just fine. And you can ride slower in the higher settings as well. That's the nice thing about that torque sensor. In each setting, you do have different speed limits, but it can work with you up to those limits and kind of meet you where you want to pedal. Our test bike shipped with its max speed set to 26 miles per hour, but we bumped that up to 28 for our speed test to match Eupphree's advertisements. That also bumped the throttle up to 28, but starting in October of 2023, you'll be able to adjust those things separately. And actually, the throttle should not be active immediately, but that is something you can turn on during the assembly process. We brought the top speed back down to 20 to test the throttle acceleration so that it could meet the usual class 2 limit. But with those adjustments, I could hit 28 pretty comfortably when pedaling with a bit of extra effort. And then with the throttle, I noticed that ours boosted up above 20 miles per hour temporarily, but then dropped back down for a steady cruising speed. There's one other thing I want to mention, and that's a really cool feature within the standard settings menu called Auto Assist. So with this activated, the bike automatically increases the pedal assist setting as you get moving faster. So it's sort of a set it and forget it deal that I think a lot of riders are going to enjoy. The feeling wasn't quite as natural and smooth as I'd have liked, but I think I would have gotten more used to it with more time using it. So overall, I think it works pretty well. In our range test, the City Robin did a fantastic job. We managed to exceed Eupphree's estimated range of up to 60 miles. We topped out at almost 68 when we tested it in eco mode. We did another test in turbo mode to establish a minimum range and got about 28.5 there, so most riders should expect to land somewhere in the middle depending on which setting they use. We do our range testing on our local bike paths, which have quite a few hills. We measured between about 750 and 1,600 feet of elevation in our testing. So if you live in Florida or the Midwest where it's really flat, it's entirely possible that you could beat our results. The torque sensor on this bike is going to have an impact on its range as well. So if you usually ride pretty hard, you might end up with less range since the motor will be working a little harder with you. But if you tend to be a bit more relaxed, that will give you a bit more time and distance as well. We try to keep our effort somewhere in the middle so our results can be as close to average as possible. But speaking of time, our turbo mode test took about an hour and a half since the motor was using a lot of power, but we were pretty shocked by our eco mode test. That took nearly 6 hours, which is a really impressive amount of time on a single charge, as long as you don't mind riding a little bit slower. I'm gonna pass you off to Justin, who performs all of our hill tests at Hellhole. He rode the bike up the path using only its throttle, and then did a second test when pedaling in turbo mode. I'll see you back here again shortly.
All right, so on the Euphree City Robin, the 500 watt rear hub motor that peaks at 900 watts, and we'll see how this does. So climbing through the steepest section, I'm right about 11 miles an hour right now. 10 miles an hour, 9. Right down to about 8. Through that. So kind of low through that section was right, right about 7 miles an hour. And so far I would say I'm pretty impressed with the noise of the motor. It's not very loud. A whiny, you definitely can hear it, but pretty solid. I'll let you listen to the motor through this next section here So you can see how it sounds as you kind of hit a steeper section of a hill and then come out of it. Yeah, so there you go. Again, dropped down about 7 miles an hour, but easily made it through that. You know, it's not going to be a record time, but we're definitely going to make it up hellhole. And so, which is really nice on a city kind of commuter cruiser, comfortable cruiser, kind of like this bike is. So we'll see what the results are. But the motor sounded nice, not overly loud, and seemed to engage nicely with the throttle. Okay, so we're on the pedal test now. And kind of right out the bat, I can say the motor has a nice engagement to it when I'm pedaling. It feels nice, natural, and smooth. The steep section, you know, down to 11. Just gonna shift down to 10. So I had to shift twice there. We kind of maintain that 10 miles an hour, which is pretty decent for a 500 watt rear hub motor. This next section, again, I'm going to let you listen to the motor to try to give you a sense of what it sounds and feels like as you're climbing a steep hill and then come out into a flat section. Okay, so got down to about 9.5. You can hear the motor. Very similar to the throttle test. Hear it working, but it's not too loud, not too annoying. And we'll see what the results are, but overall I can say I was, again, kind of definitely soft pedaling up this hill, not breathing hard at all, starting to get hot. And so, yeah, this one definitely can climb hellhole without you having to put too much effort into it.
So as you could see, the City Robin did a solid job in both tests. Justin measured 1 minute and 35 seconds on throttle, which averaged 11.4 miles per hour. And in turbo mode, his results improved a little bit. We measured 1 minute and 29 seconds with an average speed of 12.2 miles per hour there. Neither result was particularly fast when compared to other commuter or cruiser style bikes we've tested, but this bike kept a pretty steady pace and it didn't struggle at all, so we're really happy with its capabilities. And they line up pretty closely with what we expected considering the bike's weight and its motor's peak output of 900 watts and 85 Newton meters of torque. Ultimately, this test showed that the City Robin X Plus can handle some pretty intimidating hills, and it also gives you the option of how you might want to approach those. If you want to save on battery power or get a workout, you can pedal uphill very easily, but if you don't want to have to work, the motor can do all of that by itself as long as you don't mind moving a little slower. Let's take the Euphree City Robin X Plus out for another spin so you can get a sense for what it's like to ride. All right, so we are here on the Euphree City Robin X Plus to talk about the elements of its ride quality. Now, as a Dutch style commuter slash cruiser bike, you end up with a nice upright riding position that gives you a nice view of your surroundings. There's a single frame size here that fits riders from 5 foot to 6'1". You get quite a few places of adjustment. There's about 9 inches in the seat post, and you have an adjustable stem. So that gives you about 6 inches of reach adjustment and 8 inches of handlebar height adjustment, which is really nice. And then in talking about the actual comfort of the ride itself, you end up feeling a very smooth, comfortable ride with the Suntour suspension fork and the suspension seat post. The fork has 100 millimeters of travel and the seat post has 27.2 millimeters of travel. So again, any bumps that you're gonna run into, very comfortable. Good handling and good traction with the tires. Those are made by Kenda and they have kind of an interesting hybrid tread pattern that is mostly for paved surfaces, but it has enough texture that if you have, you know, like a dirt road on your morning commute or something, you're not gonna have to sweat it. It'll handle that just fine. And then again, with the suspension, you're gonna feel very comfortable. And then we'll talk about the motor. That is, of course, made by Bafeng. It's a 500 watt rear hub motor with a torque sensor. So really good engagement with the motor up front. It is a little bit delayed re-engaging. I'll show you that now. I'm gonna get up to speed here, and then I'm gonna coast, and then I'll bump it up to turbo mode. So I'll move my feet so you can hear when the motor re-engages, and I'll do that now. Okay, so there you heard that. That was about 2 full rotations of the cranks, but you know, good amount of power with the motor, and then 4 different pedal assist settings. So let's jump back to the studio and talk about that a little bit more. I wish it were possible to convey how comfortable this bike is through that video clip, but you're gonna have to take my word that it feels absolutely awesome to ride, even over long distances. It's just super smooth, and I thought the riding position was very natural, plus it has nice and relaxed handling. That motor re-engagement is definitely one thing that we'd like to see improved on the next version of the bike. The initial engagement is fast, and the responsiveness of the torque sensor is great, but it seems like the re-engagement after coasting or braking is a little slower and maybe more cadence-based, and I'd prefer for it to be a little bit faster on the uptake. Other than that, I really have nothing but good things to say here. I think a lot of those little elements I mentioned before, and even just the glossy paint job and the brown saddle and grips, just give the City Robin a little bit more of a luxurious feel than a lot of other e-bikes you'll find priced around $2,000. I also really liked that I didn't feel completely confined to pavement on the bike. I don't think it's something you're gonna wanna take anywhere super rough and rocky, but it's definitely a little bit more flexible than your average commuter or cruiser, and it's going to give you a comfortable ride. I would still suggest slowing down when you're approaching bumps. Suspension seat posts like this can be a little bit springy, and you don't wanna get launched out of the saddle. But overall, we were really impressed by the ride quality here. There's a lot to love, and this bike deserves every bit of praise. If you've watched any of my previous reviews with similar bikes, you know that it takes a lot for a cruiser style bike to really jive with me. This one hits the mark and checks all of those boxes. I really enjoyed riding and testing the City Robin, and I think its test results really back up how great of a bike I think it is. It did a solid job across the board. The only real point of critique that we have is with the motor's re-engagement. The pedaling experience was pretty good overall, but we'd like to see the sensitivity of the sensor tweaked a little bit so it can pick back up faster and then feel a bit more responsive after coasting or hitting the brakes. There's a ton of versatility here, and I think the City Robin X Plus is equally good for commuters who need to get to work in a hurry, or those who might just want something comfy and fun to take out for an evening ride. It has enough cargo capacity for running errands and hauling some gear, and it's flexible enough that you could load the bike up on a bike rack and bring it camping, as long as you're not way out in the sticks. I think this is kind of a bike for everyone, and I really think you can't go wrong here. If you want to read more about our tests or our experiences on the bike, we'll leave a link to our written review in the video description down below. We'll also leave a link to the Euphree website so you can check out the other cool colors that are available. If you decide to make a purchase, please use that link to help support our channel, and thanks a lot for watching. I hope you found this review helpful. That's all for today. Again, I'm John with Electric Bike Report, and this is the Euphree City Robin X Plus.